In today's show, we discuss, was the Enfield House haunted by a poltergeist?
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasula and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello my friend. I hope you're keeping safe and well.
What the hell, Tony? What you gonna do, eh?
I, oh dear, I've had a terrific week or so because it was my birthday, so I'm quite upbeat. I've had a good time. Had a few gifts. Had quite a lot of alcohol. It was good fun. And here I am with my esteemed friend and colleague, and he's like, ugh.
Well, I didn't know it was your birthday, even though you mentioned birthday alcohol. I thought it was someone else's birthday. So happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, rest. But you see, you were having alcohol. You were having alcohol. You're having a good time. My birthday, I just think to myself, well, that's one more step closer to the grave.
Oh,
I actually don't celebrate birthdays and my family know, because to me it's like a funeral thing, isn't it? It's like, this is it. You get closer and closer.
no.
So what do you say to your crotchety old grandma when she says your generation relies too much on technology? What do you say to
Okay.
that?
Well, what I'm going to say, I've got an answer, but I'm not going to. I'll leave the answer to you.
You say, no, your generation relies too much on technology, and then you unplug the life support.
Oh, that's horrible. That's horrible.
Oh, I'm coughing. I don't know why I'm coughing. I'm
I
coughing.
don't know why you're coughing. I'm the one with the
And
cough,
simpatico or something, I suppose.
You're mirroring my cough.
Yes.
Indeed. Anyway, let's move on with the show. And in today's show, we're going to discuss. It's not a conspiracy theory, but it is a strange one. We're discussing, was the Enfield House haunted? Now, Taya, do you know anything about this particular house? Hauntedness?
Yes,
Anything about it?
for those people interested in the paranormal, such as myself. It's one of the more famous cases of a house in the UK, actually, Enfield House. I think Enfield is the town, is it? Am I correct?
Yeah. It's just outside of London.
Just outside of London. And it's not interesting that London's a conurbation. It's a bit of an aside. But because I worked in London in Camberwell, and I read a bit of history. I was reading something just in passing, and someone said something about taking a trip from somewhere to the town of Camberwell. Can you imagine? And Camberwell now is more or less central London. I mean, well, it's not really, but you know what I mean. It's smack in the middle of London. And you think to yourself, what do you mean taking a trip to the town of Camberwell? And then I gradually began to understand that all these places that we know used to be towns.
Yes.
Far away from London city itself. And so when you say Enfield, you say, oh, Enfield. Enfield would have been at some point a town outside of London. It's a little bit like how I live in Northampton now. And in my head anyway, it's quite a long way away from Milton Keynes. But little by little, Milton Keynes is sort of creeping, the developments. I mean, right now you can still do, I would say, a 15-minute drive in the countryside before you get to Milton Keynes. So 15 minutes by car, that's quite a distance, right? But if at the same rate of expansion, one day, Northampton, believe it or not, will be a suburb of Milton Keynes.
Or vice versa.
Well, they'll merge.
They'll merge. Well, that's pretty much what's happened in London, isn't it? As you said.
So London is a conurbation. It's all these little towns that have grown and grown and grown, and then have merged into this humongous
Mm.
city, which I think is actually one of the largest in terms of land area. I think places like Shanghai are even larger, which is
Mm.
mind blowing.
And
So that's the biggest side.
Mexico City,
Mexico
even
is
bigger still. Yes,
the biggest on the
huge.
planet.
Yeah, it is. Mexico City now. It's overtaken Tokyo. But
Wow. Can you
but
imagine what that would be like? Just you cross the city in the same city, and it takes you hours across the same city. It's mind blowing, and that's
but
probably
you,
because of the traffic.
but yeah, there is that. But then if you think of that, it's there's 22 million people living in
Can you
one
imagine?
city.
Can you imagine that?
There's countries with less populations than that city. That's the thing.
It's
Incredible.
astonishing.
But what happens when a
Enfield,
town?
so
Yeah,
yeah,
Enfield. This house in Enfield, which in you're absolutely right, used to be like Enfield was, I suppose, a small town, but
yeah,
now it's been almost swallowed up
swallowed up.
by London
It's just a
growing.
suburb now of London.
Yeah,
Not
it's a
even a
suburb or
suburb.
a
It's not even a
borough.
suburb.
Is it a borough?
It's
What's it referred to as? This I want to know.
an area.
An
it's
area,
not. It's
borough,
not an
maybe.
area. An
Hmm.
area in London,
Yeah.
which is weird. And so we the the rumor, if you like, the impression, if you're not a serious student, if you don't have a podcast and it's podcast coming up and you have to research the subject, you just go by what is in the popular imagination. It's supposedly one of the best documented cases of poltergeist activity ever, basically.
Indeed. Yeah.
And all the classics, all the classic signs classic circumstances of a poltergeist, which is an adolescent child, in this case a female,
Yeah.
and in her presence, objects move and things happen. And it was documented by police,
Indeed. Yes.
by the London Psychiatrical Research
Yep.
Society, and by journalists,
Mm.
and I think even academician or two. So,
Yeah.
so a whole bunch of people studied this, and you think to yourself, wow, this is a firm instance, a good, well documented case of poltergeism. I don't know how you pronounce that. There's such a word.
Poltergeist, haunting.
Yeah, I wanted
It's
to say like
classed as that.
poltergeist. I wanted to make it into an adjective, but into a noun. Into a noun, but I don't think I can. So yeah, poltergeist activity.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's a profound one because, you rightly say, it was witnessed
Mm-hmm.
by several separate individuals. Just to put a little frame around the story, just to give a bit of context, it was a single mum called Peggy Hodgson, and she lived in a terraced house, which for our American friends, I don't know how you describe it. They're close together. There's all little houses linked one by one. I don't know. It's in America that semi-detached are called duplexes, I think, but in terraced houses is something.
Well, they do have terraced houses.
They do they?
In America, because the big brownstone houses in New York, those are terraced houses.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
but
sort of
I don't know
house.
what they call them. But I don't think they call them brownstones because they're not always brownstones. But definitely, Americans would know what I mean when I say the brownstone houses of New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was one of them, so it wasn't a big house at all. And she had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Yeah, and the daughters, I'll name them. There was Margaret, 14, and Janet, 11. Now, remember, this is in 1977 when this was reported, so it was quite a number of years ago. She also had
the year after the great 1976.
Before the great 1976.
The year after the great 1976.
Why was 1976 a great?
Oh my goodness gracious me! Weren't you there? Oh wow!
Enlighten me.
Oh, if you weren't there, you don't know what I'm talking about. If you find someone slightly older than you, like me, as old as myself, just who was in the UK, just say to them, right? This is a challenge, and we'll come back to it hopefully. And I hope you do remember. Just say to them, 1976, and they get all misty-eyed. 1976 was a wonderful, wonderful summer. It was the summer of 1976.
It was the hottest summer in years.
It was the hottest summer in years. It was Dancing Queen was #1 for 17 weeks. It was just glorious. It was just romantic. It was just the best ever. All right,
You've got to enlighten me now. I probably just missed it, but I know.
Can you imagine missing the summer 76? Terrible, man.
The summer 76 being very, very hot. It was a heat wave in the UK.
It was a heat wave, but if you were a certain age, it was romantic because of the heat, because of the music, just the times. You know, it was just glorious. It was just wonderful. It was simply fantastic for everybody. We all say that, summer 76. It's
There's
like,
got to be one specific.
I think a slightly older generation that said, the summer of 69. Or
summer of 69, yeah. Summer of 69. But...
69, that would have been for them. So I know what they're talking about, but I'm talking about mine, which is
76.
76.
Okay, interesting.
Got a tickle in my nose. I'm going to sneeze, I think.
Okay. Sure. But yeah, we've digressed slightly because we were talking about it's 1977 for this particular lady. And
that was a terrible year, by the way. Really boring. It was a real letdown. After 76,
77, that was the Queen's Jubilee. What do you mean?
Yeah, it was. If I think about my life, it's actually been downhill since 76, man.
So how you view it, Tyler.
That's how I view it. Yeah.
Indeed. Right. Anyway, so this lady, her name was Peggy Hodgson. She was, like I said, she was single mum, 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. 2 girls shared the room, 2 boys shared the room. And yes, she worked hard, went to a local school. The kids went to a local school, and they were well known in the neighbourhood and community. All got on well with everybody, the neighbours, everybody quite liked them. And then on this night in April 30th, 1977, their lives then turned upside down because whilst Peggy was downstairs, the kids had gone to bed, she was hearing all noises coming from upstairs and thinking, what is going on? She shouted up and keep the noise down. And then Janet, remember Janet, the younger of the 2 daughters, because Margaret was 14, Janet was 11, she was saying, Mummy, the bed keeps moving. So the mum didn't do anything. She ignored it, thought it was being silly. She said, just go to sleep, just go to sleep. You're imagining it, and left it. Following night, the day after, it happened again. No, it was August, not April, sorry. August the 30th, 1977. The following night, it happened again. And this time, Peggy thought, this is ridiculous. She's hearing noises, daughter saying the bed's moving. She went up into the room, and as she's going up, she heard a crash. She's like, what's going on? And she came up into the room, and as she entered the room, there was a chest of drawers that was blocking her path. So she's trying to push it, but the chest of drawers is resisting. It's pushing back on her. And she's like a bit freaked out. What the hell? A chest of drawers is pushing back at her, and she's trying to push it out the way to enter the room. And she did move it, and then she got her daughter and trying to coax her out, because it was like the chest of drawers was pushing her out of the room so she couldn't get into the room. So she was a bit startled by this. What the hell? And the other noises that were coming from the room, she couldn't fathom. They were coming from the ceiling, then it sounded like they were from the walls. Couldn't work out what this was, and got quite scared. And so got the girls to come out, and the boys, got them into dressing gowns, and literally left the house and started knocking on her neighbour's door. Mm-hmm. And her neighbour, they named them as well, there's Vic and Margaret Nottingham, and they were neighbours. Now they knew the family, knew the kids, and they thought, look, calm down, I'll go and investigate. Now Vic, the husband of Margaret, the neighbour, he's a big burly builder. He's a big builder. So
I can't do a London. I wish I could do a London accent because that'd be perfect. Bro.
yeah, it would be. So he went back into their house to see what was going on. And he went in the bedroom where what was happening, and he could hear this noise banging on the ceiling and on the walls. And he's a big guy. He was getting scared. Now, clearly,
Chicken.
clearly, that's not a good thing. Thinking, what is this noise? Where's it coming from? So they decided to call the police, as you rightly have already mentioned. And there was a PC, a female police officer, PC Carolyn Heaps, and she was obviously very skeptical. She thought, yeah, what's this been reported? This sounds ridiculous. Has somebody been drinking? This is just nonsense. This cannot be what could be going on. But then she went into the house herself, and she saw moving armchairs. No one behind them, armchairs moving, which obviously, as a police officer, startled her as well.
You think?
Yeah, just a bit. But I mean, the armchairs this time, she never even made it up the stairs. She saw the armchairs move downstairs. They were moving in the living room, which sort of took her aback, but she really didn't know where to go with this. And so she said, I don't know how the police can help here. She actually told them, look, I don't know. So they left. They said, we've got to deal with crime. Unfortunately, this is not a crime. Yes, it's a disturbance, but it's not anyone trying to break in, but we can't understand what it is. You'll have to involve somebody else. And so the police left, even though they documented that the furniture was moving, but there was nothing visible that they could tell was moving the furniture. And obviously, it's not really a police matter. Their resources would be better used elsewhere. So they left. And so it left poor Peggy with her kids on her own, basically, again. So they obviously had to go back in the house and try and stay there and deal with it. But they actually called a newspaper. They called the Daily Mirror, which is still a popular newspaper in the UK today. And a photographer called Graham Morris from the newspaper went to the house, and he witnessed moving objects in the house. And he heard the weird wailing, screaming sounds which were coming out from upstairs as well. So imagine this scenario. You're hearing this. You're a reporter. You've heard from the family that there's these noises going on, furniture moving. Again, very skeptical from the newspaper, but let's go and see whether they can find where this ruse is. Is it true? Is it not? He turns up and he sees the same thing. Now, I mean, Ty, I'm explaining the scene here. Before I move on, what would your views be if you were, say, that photographer and you then witness what other people have already told you verbally?
I'd be very interested. I'd keep taking photographs. And unfortunately, we didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have video capability in those days, because photographs obviously are static elements and they can't show you convincingly movement. And that's the problem, isn't it?
But what was interesting as well was he took several photos of this happening, okay, to document that it had moved. Now, obviously, if you take several pictures fairly close together, it shows the positioning of the furniture as it moved. Although single pictures, you could, if you're really skeptical.
Well, what is a movie but a series of single pictures anyway?
Yeah, it's just but then again, you could still think it could be manipulated in between the pictures, if you're being really critical, of course. But what was disturbing, especially to Graham, was he took all these photos, but the disturbing footage was unable to be viewed because the recording equipment that was taking the pictures somehow malfunctioned.
Yeah.
Which is very strange, because there's other instances of evidence being captured on even modern day mobile phones and video and things like that, and they tend to malfunction. We spoke about it on several occasions on another conspiracy program when we talked about the Skinwalker Ranch, if you remember, when they try and record stuff and try and get evidence, and as soon as they try and get the evidence, the equipment malfunctions right at the key point, and it seems like what it's being impeded to work just at the point that they need it the most. And in this case, Graham Morris, who's the photographer, was caught out in the similar fashion, but his pictures that he was taking were affected by whatever it was in this property that was stopping them recording the actual evidence of the event, which is really odd. There's a pattern here that seems to replicate itself when there is strangeness happening. It interferes with equipment. And as you rightly said, going back to 77, it wasn't fancy electronic gizmos. It was just normal film photography, wasn't it? So how was that affected? And why was that affected? This is the strangeness of the whole piece. Even though it was visually observed, capturing that evidence would have been almost a slam dunk, but there was no physical evidence because the camera equipment failed.
I wouldn't put it on the same level as the Skinwalker Ranch. What's the word I'm going to look for here? Anomalies. I think that's a good word to use.
Yeah.
The Skinwalker Ranch anomalies are such that when you see them, it's a very peculiar anomaly. Because I think the video is readily available online, anybody interested. The Skinwalker Ranch videos of something that isn't there. And the video shows what seems to be like what does it seem to be? It seems to be like almost like a shimmering, but it's not. It's if you've ever been in a hot country, maybe even the UK on really hot day, and there's that sort of shimmering close to the surface of the road surface. It's almost like some people say it looks to them like water. It doesn't look like water to me, but that's like a mirage.
Yes.
Yeah. So this Skinwalker Ranch video shows what looks almost like a mirage of a funnel or something, and it's just there. And it continues to be there. Now, I'd love to, if it wasn't in America, I'd go, but as I'm a black man, I'm not going to go to America and get shot, man. So, yeah, I'm serious.
I don't think they'd shoot you.
White people and women tend to say that. Women of any race and white men always seem to say, "Yeah, don't worry about it," because they don't have skin in the game. You see, I've got actual skin in the game. So I'm not going to go to America and get shot. Okay, but my impression, rightly or wrongly, is that if you go to Skinwalker Ranch and you take a video of this thing, you'll get the same effects because there's something there that we can't physically get to. It's there, but we can't interact with it. Do you know? People go there, they try to interact with it, they can see this thing, and that's why when people
record it in any way.
No, you can record it. You can record it, but you can't touch it. There's nothing. You can't interact with it, right? And why would that be? So when people say it's alien phenomenon, which is really out there for me personally, me and aliens, we don't really like. No. But it's pretty hard to explain. It's because I don't know why scientists haven't gotten more into it. Now, I'm not trying to digress. What I'm trying to say is that quality of evidence where it's science, isn't it? Repeatable, observable, repeatable.
Yeah.
That's the basis of all good science. But the Enfield is not repeatable. That's one of the problems I have with it. You see, it's a one-off. If you weren't there, you weren't there, and that's one of my big problems with it. It's like the Skinwalker Ranch is one of our better cases. Just not just that shimmering, but the ongoing issues at that ranch is almost like if you live there long enough, you'll see something. You see what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
So that's interesting. That's been going on for donkeys, it's decades now. I don't know why it isn't far more studied, far better by universities and things. It's really peculiar, you know what? But this Enfield thing is like, that's the report of something that happened. And I mean, you gave a very good, by the way, that was a very good retelling of the Enfield poltergeist story. I've been looking at it. It's actually a borough. Enfield is a London borough
now. Okay.
A borough, and it's to the south of London. And the house in which this took place is still standing. It's still there, and it's an ordinary house, and people live there, and they've lived there quite happily since Margaret, what did you call her surname now? Hodgson, was it?
Peggy Hodgson.
Since Peggy Hodgson passed away in, I believe, 2004, I believe she died.
Yeah.
You know, so the house is there, people live there. You can actually, I don't know if you can visit the house, but I mean, you can't go, I'm not sure you can go into someone's private property, but you can go and take pictures of the house if you're so minded. And it's, I won't give the number itself. You can easily find it online, but I won't give the actual street number. But it's called.
I've got it. I've got it. I found it.
No, you can't find it. I just don't want to give.
I see. Yeah.
Green Street in Enfield.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just an ordinary house. McDonald's in one side, to one side, and school to the other. Nothing unusual about it, and I suppose when you talk about classic poltergeist activity, it usually does center around an adolescent, doesn't it? And obviously, when the adolescent grows up a little bit, I mean, most poltergeist activity, most poltergeist cases, because you can read about poltergeist and things, with the London Psychiatrical Research, S1SR, Psychiatrical Research Council, so our Psychiatrical Research Council. PSC or something. I can't remember what it's actually called. I was going to join them. I remember talking about this before. When I was working in London, my intention was to join them and to be attending their meetings and so on. They've got a nice body of work on poltergeist as well. It usually only lasts a few weeks to a few months, so it's quite a short duration of time when this activity happens. And I suppose people think these people, I happen to be one of them, think that it's actually psychic energy from the child. Unregulated psychic energy is like a burst of energy. So it's telekinesis, basically.
Wow.
Which the child does unknowingly. And when the period of time has passed, do you know what I mean when you say your goods are arriving?
Yeah.
Right. As a boy, when your goods arrive, and as a girl, when your goods arrive, this tends to be the time when this happens. And then after a few months, it just dissipates and it's gone.
This happened. I mean, you're right. You're absolutely spot on what you're saying, and it does seem to be around adolescence. It's not generally older people. It's definitely younger people. Yeah. And this, whatever entity it was more around Janet, the younger one, the 11-year-old.
That's right.
But it was for 2 years. It wasn't a short period.
Well, you've told the story very well, and now I'm going to come with the sort of no, not really. The cynical. Yeah. Okay. So to be cynical, I've got the first thing is that the pictures, we don't have any. Okay. Well, there's a couple of pictures. I mean, there's one picture of I believe it's Janet, in midair between two beds. If you look online,
Yeah.
but if you look at the position of her legs, if you look at that, sorry, somebody hoovering near you or something. I can hear this weird sound behind you.
No, that's probably my machine working up. It's for some reason it's speeding up, so something's bugging it. I need to reboot it, so apologies there.
Okay,
If you can
as if
pick up
someone's
that sound.
hoovering,
Yeah, it's the
by.
PC. I don't know what it's doing at the minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you look at the position of her legs and everything, that's not someone who's being transported. That's someone who's jumping, because the legs are in sort of like an L shape, sort of like like a lightning, a single lightning bolt. Of the SS uniform, that single, like a single one, and that's somebody leaping between beds. So that's not convincing at all.
No.
If the legs were straight down and she was just sort of hovering in the air, that would be impressive, but it's not. And that's about the only picture I think we've got. And then another picture where one of these researchers is comforting her. And I know it's 2022 and we've got dirty minds because everybody is dirty. And you look at him comforting her and you just become uncomfortable yourself. Because you just think, yeah, I don't like that a lot. It's like, yeah. Now, the police report, is there a police report stating what you said? I don't believe there is.
No.
I believe that there are reports of a police report.
Yeah, but
no one. Exactly. The PC did not go back to the police station and write up a report, which later researchers can go to and say, look, here's solid evidence. Yeah. This PC saw X, Y, Z.
She did say, and she spoke it, but never did a written report. My understanding was
that's not really good enough, is it?
It's not something. What can you put it down as? It's also.
No, you just put down what you observed. I mean, you don't have to say it's a poltergeist. You just say, I went to this house. I saw a chair move. I don't understand why the chair moved because there was no obvious sign of anything that I could see of what made it move. Signed, yours sincerely, Blair. That's all you do. You just,
I think this is why a lot of people in the army and armed forces are reluctant to report things like strange observations that they see, and obviously they're the ones most likely to see all this weird stuff, especially in the sky or when they're actually with the army or the navy. They see this stuff, but they're reluctant to report it because it's just strange, because their reputation's on the line and they feel they'll be ridiculed and their credibility is then.
I don't understand why anybody would feel that, because if you just report what you saw, it's when you say, I think it's when people jump to conclusions and they say, I went to the house and there was poltergeist activity. No, that's a problem. How do you know it was poltergeist activity?
Yeah, but that's how they frame it. Because
so you say, we went to a house because the family was panicked. Objects were moving around. I saw an armchair execute a move from here to there, and I can't explain why it did that. That's your report.
Well, yes, true.
No one can turn around and start making fun of you. I saw what I saw.
Did you see the person move it? Was there any strings?
I checked for strings, obviously, because I'm a police officer. I checked for strings, and there was no one standing there. I can't miss a huge hulking person moving a chair around. So what do you think happened to it? I don't know what happened to it. I'm just telling you what I saw. And I challenge you to tell me I didn't see it, because I'll take you outside and I'll smack you up. Right? And then when you have that kind of an irascible attitude, people calm down.
Well, but if you're talking to your boss, for instance, let's say that police officer had to go back and give that report to their superior, then the superior would challenge them. What do you think you saw?
I don't know what I didn't think I saw anything. I'm just telling you what I actually saw. It's not my place.
That. Well, Inspector, this is what did you? Sorry.
This is when you stick your face into your boss's face and you snarl.
No,
you have to.
Not quite how it works.
That's how it works, man. See what I mean? You see what I mean? You've got to
for the benefit of our listeners who are listening and not watching.
Oh yeah, of course.
I just got scared there because Tayo put a close up of himself right snarling in front of the camera, and it was
Yeah, that's what you do, boss or no boss. You look, you could be my boss, but don't ever try to traduce my honor, because I take my honor very seriously. And if I say I saw it, I saw it.
Yeah.
And you might be my boss, but don't think you're my boss and you can ever go there. You can't go there. I saw it. End of story.
I think though.
But don't jump, because I wouldn't go say I saw a poltergeist.
Agreed.
Aha, that's when you have a problem.
Yeah.
I saw a
when
UFO.
You've made the
Don't
conclusion.
say I saw a UFO. I saw this thing in the sky.
Yeah.
It looked like this. It did this, and it did that. Well, what do you think about it? I don't know.
When you're reporting something like that, if you're shook up in some way, you will make an assumption as to what it is, because, like what we've said on other shows, we humans want to fill in the gaps. We don't like it when it's unknown. We want to have an answer. And so it's quite natural for us to jump to conclusions, to fill in the gaps for strange things. It's very rare, where someone will just say, well, I don't know. I think it's this, but I'm not sure. They want to frame it somehow. So even a police officer, it's
really a bad attitude to have.
I agree. I don't
have that attitude myself. It's just, the same thing about you and I, we have this ongoing debate thing where it's like, for instance, the origin of the universe. I'm prepared to pose questions and just go, I don't know. But there are other people who say things like the universe popped into existence from out of nothing, because they refuse to just leave it with, we don't know. But the most honest truth is, we don't know.
Well, that's how
So even God to me, God is an encapsulation of the notion that we don't know.
Mm.
Because you can't explain the origin of God either.
No.
So whether it is God or multiple universes or whatever it is, all you're doing is trying to encapsulate and wrap that thing into, like you're saying, into a concept that you feel comfortable with.
Yes.
Instead of just being like, I don't know.
We don't know. We just still have to keep looking for the answers because we don't know.
Although I still think now it's a virtual reality, not a simulation.
The origin of our universe, the Big Bang, was actually a reboot.
A reboot?
The PC was rebooted.
Okay, that's really out there. That's really out there, man. That's one of the most out there.
Virtual reality PC was rebooted at that point.
What about the first time it happened? Why does it have to be a reboot?
Okay, they just started the program. Here we go.
Yeah, but why do you have to make it a reboot? I don't understand.
I'm just using it just an example.
Yikes, man!
Good job. Whoever created the universe didn't use Microsoft, because then it would hang occasionally and would have I'm not joking. I'm joking. My Microsoft friends, I use a PC. I love my PC. Don't worry, it was only a joke. Let's come back on point here. Let's come back to the story with Peggy in this so-called haunted house. There was more for the story, because Peggy, after she didn't get much help from the police, obviously the Daily Mirror tried to take photos and couldn't, so they were stumped despite the fact they saw it. She then contacted the Society of Physical Research.
That's right. That's the one. That's the people, Society of
Physical Research.
Psychical.
Yes.
I don't know how to pronounce that word, but it's very difficult. Psychical Research.
They've been set up since 1882.
SPR, is it? What are the initials?
Society of Psychical Research.
SPR. When I see the initials, I recognize it, but I can't visualize it right now. SPR. Yeah. Psychical, starting with P for psychic.
And they've been around since 1882 to sort of look into issues of psychic or paranormal activity. And so Peggy was actually visited by two members of that organization, Morris Gross and Guy Leon Playfair. Very, very nice names, actually. They're not, John Smith. Morris Gross and Guy Leon Playfair.
Gross and Playfair.
Yes, Gross and Playfair. And Playfair was actually a writer of parapsychology, but he he came along as well. And both those men, because they'd seen things like this before, both said exactly what you said, Tayo. They noticed that the activity was centered around Peggy's daughter, Janet, the 11-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they spoke about these weird whistling noises and these weird barking sounds that seem to emanate from Janet's location more so than anywhere else in the room. So, like you, I think they thought that it could have been some paranormal thing that was so linked to Janet in some way. But where does the link come from? Why is it that we see examples like this one elsewhere around the world around adolescents? Why? And you said that it's because they haven't reached puberty yet. There seems to be that little window.
That little burst of psychic energy that gets out of hand. There's something called a planchette. I don't know if you know it. It's you take as what would that be? 2 inches. You take a 2-inch. You take a make a square out of paper, 2 inches by 2 inches, right? Fold it along the edges, so that it makes a cross, and then because you made a cross and it's sort of forms like a pyramid of sorts.
Oh yeah.
Right? Balance it on a pin.
Yep.
Let's say on a piece of cork or something.
Mm-hmm.
Put your hands around it, right, and make it move this. Move it this way or that. Most people can do it.
Yes, they can,
right?
Using an energy that we seem to have.
Using an energy we seem to have, and if you keep practicing, you can do it from quite far away, even without your hands around it. So we've got telekinesis.
Something similar, yeah.
Exactly, telekinesis isn't. I don't know who's arguing about it because we can demonstrate it, but I don't know why people, don't just do it for yourself. Nothing convinces you more than you do it for yourself.
Yes,
because you're not cheating, so you can do it, right? So just think of a child who's got an excess of that kind of energy. And if you've done it, you'll find out it's really difficult to control because you and your mind, you're struggling. You want it to turn counterclockwise, it turns clockwise. You want it to turn it one way, it turns another way. Sometimes it just wobbles. It's really hard energy to control. And think of a child who's got a lot of that energy and it's uncontrolled. Who knows how it's going to manifest.
But this in itself is really a thing that science needs to look at, because if we're saying that this is not some sort of entity or a ghost of someone who's passed, then it's only a psychic ability of a young child because they can't control it. Yeah. And surely the scientific community should be investing more time and energy to understand what sort of energy this is. Is it measurable? Can it be recorded once you do it? Because you've just said this example with the cork and the pin and this little thing that floats on the top. I've done something similar with I read a book by Maxwell Maltz called Psycho-Cybernetics. There you go.
Okay.
And he asks you to do a similar thing where you get a glass of water.
Oh, the matchstick.
Not a matchstick, a pin on some cigarette paper.
All right. Yeah.
Cigarette paper was obviously more common back in when I did this. Yeah, nowadays less so. But you balance the pin on the cigarette paper and then you pop it in the water. Now, as the cigarette paper gets wet, the pin will now rest on the film of the water, which is quite unusual. It will sit there. And you, without touching the glass, just concentrate on that pin and you make it move. And the pin will move, like you rightly say. Yeah. And you can, if you practice enough, you can stop it and make it go the other way. But it takes some effort.
Yeah.
But what is going on
You can
At
also,
this
by the way,
point.
if anybody wants to try it, you can actually use a matchstick, which is
Probably
usually the
better,
way.
yeah.
You just drop a matchstick onto the water, wait for things to settle down, because as you drop it on, it will move around and it will do stuff. When it's settled, try to move it around with your mind, and in general, you can. It's really weird, but no, well, we have so many examples of. I think most of us have so many examples of when we use our minds in an unusual way, and when we're really committed, almost like in an instant, you do something and you really mean it and you really want it, and it happens. And first of all, we're a little bit surprised that it happened. Then we accept it. Then we forget it. I think a lot of people have had that kind of an experience too.
It's funny, right, that you actually are on board with this, because this is part of what I mentioned, and we've even discussed this on a very early
It's funny
show.
that I am.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
am
yeah.
on board with
I'll
this.
tell you why. Let me explain. I'm sorry I'm digressing for our listeners here, but Tayo and I did a show way back. We're talking a couple of years ago, perhaps, and we spoke about whether positive thinking affected you in a positive way and also your surroundings. And you poo-pooed that, saying it's all hogwash at the time, whereas I'm obviously an advocate of this, because you affect your surroundings by your attitude, and your attitude permeates out. Now, what that is, it's a wave of some sort, which we haven't defined yet, but clearly it has some sort of effect. And you've just described that same effect in a physical manifestation of moving something. So without any known wave, we've managed to move something just by thinking about it. So if you can move something, physically, that means you can affect your immediate environment by your positive thoughts. And equally, it works in reverse. If you think negative thoughts, you can affect your immediate surroundings negatively, because again, you're permeating this wave of some sort. And I've said this all along. So I'm surprised you're now coming over to the light, my side,
I deny that I come over to the light. No, I mean, and by the way, you've mixed up all sorts of objections that I have to all sorts of things, and you've wrapped them up into something and come to the wrong conclusion. It's not. It's the people who sell optimism, almost as a tool. And as you can tell, when you say, how things going to, what the hell? Right? I mean,
you create
optimism as a tool.
by your
No,
attitude.
but I also think that absolute hopelessness is also the best way to navigate life, because if anything good happens, you're pleasantly surprised. But when things go south, you're like, yeah. What did you expect?
No.
So that way, I look around my office and I think I'm one of the happier people there. I mean, I am usually one of the happier. Okay, happy is probably going too far. But I am one of the most well-adjusted, most content people, because, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, what did you think?
Oh.
Live with it, deal with it, and I've dealt with it. It's fine. It sucks.
That's
one day
not how I work.
We'll all get lucky, and then sometimes you go in and somebody's, cheerful and whistling, and you're just like, oh God, right? But you don't have to worry about it, because by lunchtime she's stopped, man, and it's like, yeah, okay, now I see what happens. Why did you come in like me? And it's just like, oh God, more of this.
No.
Anyway,
See, I'm opposite to you. 100% opposite.
Didn't we try an experiment?
Okay.
We were speaking about, when we spoke about this, we were supposed to get our listeners together and we were going to try to make a positive change, very specific change in the world on something. That's what we said. If we find the episode again, we said we would get our listeners together when we have a large number of listeners that agree to come together to think positive thoughts on something concrete, so that it was measurable, so that we could create an effect in reality.
Didn't Uri Geller do
And
this?
and I don't know if it was Uri Geller, but somebody, and then I found out subsequently that someone already tried to influence a random number generator, and there is a statistically significant effect on the random number generator. It's, statistical. It's like, statistically that shouldn't have happened, and it's happened.
Yeah.
So it's been done, basically. It's been done by a union. I can't remember which one, but it's been done.
So doesn't this further prove my point?
No, it's supposed to affect physical things. What I don't think we can do, we can't stop the war in Russia and Ukraine by all of us thinking good, clean, and happy thoughts. What we can do is all be honest, stop telling lies, put ourselves in the other person's shoes, and be honest. Just be really honest and say, if we were them, how would we feel about what has happened, and how would we react? And if they have a reason to be offended, what can we do about alleviating that offense? Or there's a better word, I can't think of it. Alleviating that offense, and that way would end the war. We can sit down and negotiate. But people are saying now we're not going to negotiate. So there are positive things that we can do.
Have absolutes, yeah. I never agree with that.
Positive things that our attitude can have an effect on the way we behave. What I don't think you can do, because if what you're saying is right, and that we can affect people the way we affect objects, then really wicked people, really wicked ones, okay, can get together. And this is the idea behind malicious witchcraft, isn't it? Black magic. This is the idea behind it, that your malice can harm a person. So I'm getting to the point where I'm saying that's kind of dangerous thinking, and it's not just good, clean, happy thoughts help. It's also bad thoughts harm. Well, I deny that you can actually affect other people with this mental imagery visualization thing, but you can affect physical things with it. That's what I feel. I don't think it can affect other people's moods and things, because I think what you are and what they are, it's on the same level, and you don't have that. But if you think about this, a virtual reality, you are able to project downwards, but you can't project sideways. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
That's what I feel. That's what I think.
Not sure. It depends on the receptivity. Is that a word?
Yes.
No. Receptivity of the individual.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is willing and able to pass these sorts of psychic thoughts across, if someone is receptive, they can pick them up. If they're not, then it's blocked. There's almost like a blockage. So it has to work both ways. Someone has to project it, but the other one has to be in a receiving mode to pick those up.
Well, it's possible that what they're doing it to themselves. That you're not really affecting them, but they believe in you. It's like voodoo. Those people who don't believe in voodoo are not affected by when they stick a pin into
but
something.
They believe that it's happening to them. They do it to themselves. Absolutely.
So they do it to themselves.
I have a story of this directly myself, and I think I've told you before about the lady Yvonne that I bumped into in Bradford.
Oh yes. Did you not say that she'd she's still with us?
No, she's now not.
That's what I thought.
That's right. Yeah. But she lived longer than she thought she would.
Yes. People are probably wondering what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We would just have to say, go back over several. I think we've got 100 plus now.
Oh, we've got way more, 120 odd.
There we are. We are building quite a nice little library there.
Indeed.
And we do encourage you to go back and watch our evolution as podcasters extraordinaire.
Indeed. Anyway, let's we digress somewhat, but it's relevance.
It's been a nice, gentle meander through this whole thing.
I do want to go back to this Maurice Grosse and Guy Leon Playfair.
Oh yes, sorry.
Who were the psychic from the Society of Physical Research. They actually, as I said, they mentioned that they saw the activity sort of revolve around the younger daughter, which was Janet. And they also did see things like toys thrown across the house where no one was around them. They also noticed when you then picked up the toy that had been thrown, or the other doll that had been thrown, on both or several occasions they picked these bits up that had been thrown. They were hot. They couldn't quite understand why that was. And they saw things like t-shirts just literally while they're standing nearby being flung across the room. So they were witness to all of this. And they even photographed, and this time it worked, beds levitating, sofas moving, and children flung from their beds.
I need to stop you there. I've never seen any such pictures of the beds levitating. I've never seen any such pictures. What was the other one you said?
Similar, the sofas moving, and
no, you can't take a picture of a sofa moving because
no, but sofas tipped over. Who tipped them over?
Oh, tipped over.
Yeah,
I haven't seen those pictures either.
Yeah, I have one here. I could share this. I mean, again, if you want to be skeptical, you could say, well, someone's just popped them over and take a photo. Simple. But they said that they'd seen them flung, and one occasion as well, with one of these two guys that were there were quite alarmed, and a neighbor was there as well, that one of the kids was screaming that their leg was being held, couldn't move their leg. Something was holding onto the leg of one of the children. And it felt like the grip of an invisible hand, and the child was trying to pull away, and the leg was visibly being tugged behind them, but they couldn't see what was tugging. But if you could imagine a hand, it would be a hand pulling on the leg. Now that's quite a scary thing, because obviously it was a grip on the child's ankle, but obviously it was invisible. And yeah, it was really quite peculiar. And obviously they also expressed it, as did Peggy and her kids, that they felt like something evil was in the house. They couldn't put their finger on what it was, but it just felt all these, because obviously they were still living in the house. They had nowhere else to go. They had to put up with this stuff. And one part of the story that appeared was that Janet said that she spoke to an old man. She heard a voice of an old man, and she called the old man Bill. It was later discovered that there was an old man called Bill Wilkins who apparently lived and died in the house several years earlier. But Janet, the girl that was subjected or heard this speaking, did say that he did not mean to hurt them at all. All he wanted was to be left alone, because he died in a chair in the house. So this obviously worried them. Obviously, could it have been the death of somebody who hadn't got closure, who their essence remained in the property and just wanted to be left alone? But obviously the family's living in the house. That's never going to happen.
Well, you see, as someone did say, which I wanted to leave for last, that and I think I'm coming up to the top of the hour. As someone did say, if it was the ghost of Bill Watkins, then he's been peculiarly quiet for the last 40 years, because there is a family living in that house, and there's been never a word of any poltergeist activity or any other kind of paranormal activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The visitations got less and less, though. They did invite a priest to come round, yeah, and the visitations got less and less. But the children's were because of the story, because it was big news everywhere. Mm-hmm. The children suffered quite a bit because they were bullied at school. and they were called freaks. Whereas previously they got on with everybody. So this whole episode really
Humans don't like difference. Humans don't like people to be different.
No,
It's very dangerous to be different in human society.
Indeed. It
Very
just
dangerous.
made their life quite difficult.
Yeah,
Now, obviously,
even the neighbors that you mentioned, they
Yeah.
I forget. Do we actually know their surnames?
Vic and
Vic and Margaret
Nottingham.
Even they, with the continued attention of the press, even they sort of became a bit fed up with it all.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's important to note that according to at least the reports that I'm getting, the reports that I have here, that the family members did ultimately admit to faking some of this evidence.
Oh dear. See, that straight away.
What happens is
the whole thing.
usually what happens is something strange happens, and it's real, and people are panicked, and then they get attention, and the case isn't solved. And maybe this is speculation on my part. Maybe to some degree they like the attention, but whether they like the attention or not, the case is not solved satisfactorily, and they don't want people to stop.
Yeah.
They want a resolution, so they add a little something, and they create a little something. And obviously, if that gets found out, it spoils everything.
Indeed.
Right. So I'm quite happy to believe that it's always starts out as real, and then some people make the mistake of helping the evidence. And if there's one thing that I've always said, if I was ever going to be in SPR, which is London Society of Psychiatrical Research, so it's SPR. Those are the initials of that society. That is one thing you've got to be really, really careful of, is when the case has tipped over from being genuine to being helped.
Yeah.
And it's so important to tell people, don't help. It's okay if you only ever have 3 solid pieces of evidence. And so that's fine, because the 4th piece that you faked wrecks the first 3.
Indeed. It undermines it all, doesn't
Undermines it completely. Better word, undermine.
Okay. I'm mindful we're getting close to the top of the hours, you've already alluded to. So what's based on what we've talked about today and the evidence and clearly what you've come up with at the end, which is a bit of a like a stab in the heart of the case. But what's your view then? Was it a haunting then? Is the Enfield House haunted, or is it just people abusing the position? And what's your view?
My view is that there's no such thing as a poltergeist haunting anyway. That's number one.
Okay.
That there's always, I think in every case there may be a case where I have not heard of where there was an adult doing it. But in every case I've ever heard of those, there was in the house at some point an adolescent child. It's just the constant, it's just always there as part and parcel of any poltergeist activity. And again, it only lasts for a short period of time, at most months, usually weeks. And I'm quite happy to understand that it's like we've already spoken about how anybody can generally prove telekinesis for themselves. So we know that there is such a capability that humans have. And I think in this case, it was initially it was a genuine poltergeist activity, probably from the little girl from Janet. It been in one other case, I believe in America now. I can't remember now. So to be genuinely, the honest truth is I don't remember where, but probably in America, where it was determined that they thought it was the other sister, but actually it was another one. Oh. It was the center of it all. It wasn't the one they thought it was, the natural one to think of. Yeah. And I think that boiled down to they thought something like a sibling rivalry or something, subconscious sibling rivalry, and almost like putting the blame on the other one, but all unconscious, all subconscious. No, she wasn't doing it at all, on purpose or anything like that.
I mean, so going by this theory of yours, where it's actually manifested by the adolescent as opposed to there being an actual entity. How come though there is evidence of the house itself being, not in this particular case, but there's examples of a particular house or location being
I've never come across
classed as
such a thing.
haunted?
Oh, haunted? Sorry.
Haunted and-
Please, let's be very, very specific. The poltergeist activity is not a haunting.
no.
So when you say haunted, you're talking about ghosts and things. That's entirely different. It's got nothing
Well,
to do.
isn't a poltergeist classed as a ghost?
No. I mean, it's a misunderstanding. I've said it has to come. It emanates from an adolescent in the vicinity.
Because there has been paranormal and poltergeist-like activity in locations where adolescents were maybe present initially, but the adolescents are moved elsewhere. But then the poltergeist activity continues. So can they project this sort of power at distance?
Well, there'd be no reason why they couldn't. But
Because you'd have thought it would follow them.
Yeah,
then it would make more sense.
First of all, I've not heard of that. So that's the first thing. I've never heard of it being geolocated. The children have moved and it still happens. I've not heard of it. If you've heard of it, it'd be interesting to hear what cases those are.
I have heard of it. I'll have to dig it up, actually.
That would be news. That would be absolute news to me because I've had interest in these things for several years. I've never heard that.
Okay.
Secondly, if I've often thought about it, that I very often go back to one particular house in my dreams when I was growing up. I just have, maybe I was very happy at that time. I don't know. I always go back to that house. And I've often asked myself, I wonder if I'm causing anything because I'm so often in my dreams back in that house. I just wonder, are they sort of sensing a presence or something? And it's just me thinking about that house very intensely.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, see, quite possible. So it could be that, and it could not be. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. But this is new. I mean, I've never heard of a geolocated poltergeist. That is,
okay,
different people come in and they all experience this poltergeist activity in the absence of whoever was causing it, which is usually, like I said, a child.
Okay, I mean, I'm still open on this, to be honest. My conclusion, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. It sounded plausible. I don't like the fact that they've fabricated evidence, if that's what they've had to do. To me, that undermines the whole thing, which is a shame.
In fact, you see, what happened was that Playfair had recently lost his daughter, Janet, who was about 12 years old when she died. And he
lost his own daughter.
He lost his own daughter just before
Janet as well, coincidentally.
Right, and exactly. So he had a sort of emotional link to our Janet, the Enfield Janet, whereas Gross did not. And eventually, the two men had very separate ideas of what was going on. So that too is also important to have.
Yes, indeed. Okay, I mean, we have, unfortunately, we have gone over what we thought we would. So, unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show for another week.